Hello students, I'm Mr. Parmenter and I'm so happy to be here with you as we read and learn together. Please be sure you have a paper and pencil ready for today's learning activities. I'll be waiting right here. Welcome back. If you've been here the last couple times, you know that we've been learning about one of my favorite books, How to Steal a Dog. We've talked about an idea which is really important in this book and also in real life, and that is empathy, which means the ability to understand and share the feelings of others. All of us go through difficult times in our lives, and when that happens, how do we want the other people in our lives to act toward us? Exactly. We want them to treat us with understanding, for example, by giving us just a little extra patience or kindness at that moment when we need it the most. Georgina is the main character in How to Steal a Dog, and she and her family are going through a hard time right now because they've been evicted from their apartment and are living in their car. One day, Georgina gets the idea that if she could just steal a dog, she might be able to return it and get enough reward money to get her family a place to live. She finds and steals a little dog named Willie, and then she ends up meeting Willie's owner, Carmela. But when Georgina goes to Carmela's house, she finds out Carmela doesn't have much money. Also, Carmela is very upset about Willie because she loves her dog very much. And this whole situation is just not going how Georgina had planned. If you joined me in the last lesson, you remember that we used details to describe the setting of the story. Today we're going to look at some more details from the story to describe events that take place in the story. Events are things that happen in a story. They make up the plot of the story. And the plot is just a fancy name for the action of the story. Plots are usually made up of events that follow a very similar pattern, including a problem and solution. Today we will look at one of the most important events in How to Steal a Dog. We'll look at the details in this part of the story that describe the event, and these details will help us to better understand what is happening, and hopefully we'll begin to see how Georgina handles one of the problems in this story, stealing a dog. Before we start reading though, we need to create a graphic organizer to help us to record our thoughts. Go ahead and grab that pencil and paper you got to prepare for our learning today. We're going to make a trifold out of our paper. Follow me as I show you how to fold. So we start with the paper horizontal, and then we fold it 1/3 across, and then from the other side, fold it across to match, and then open it back up, and now we have 3 columns. Okay, now that we have our paper folded, across the top, write event. We're going to write the event we're describing across the top of the paper. Now we'll put a separate title for the 3 columns. In these columns, we'll record details from the text that will help us to describe the event. In the first column, write characters. Here we will record the details of who was involved in the event that we're describing. In the second column, write setting. Here we'll record details of where the event is taking place. And in the third column, write what happened. Here we'll describe the sequence of action that took place during this event. We'll summarize the actions of the event for the beginning, the middle, and the end. Go ahead and add beginning, middle, and end to your third column as well. Look at how I did it on my graphic organizer. While I read this part of the story, I want you to be looking for details about the characters, the setting, and what happened during this event. When you think of these things, write it down on your paper. Now, just to be sure you remember what was happening in the story, Georgina has decided it's time for her to return Willie to Carmela. So she lets Willie go, and he runs back to his home, and then Georgina goes to talk to Carmela. She isn't sure what she's going to say to Carmela about this whole situation, but she knows that returning the dog is the right thing to do. So on the top of our paper, let's write Georgina talks to Carmela. This is the event that we'll be describing today. Okay, ready? Let's read. Carmela, I called through the screen. Georgina, Carmela squealed from inside. Guess what? She came to the door carrying Willie. He was licking her face all over and wiggling his whole body. Willie's home, Carmela said. Tears were streaming down her face, and she looked about as happy as a person could be. He just came running right through that doggy door and into the kitchen like he had never been gone. She kissed Willie's nose. Can you believe that? She said. No, I said. I mean, yeah, I can believe that. 'Cause, come on in. Carmela pushed the screen door open. I'm going to give him a bath. He's a mess. I stepped inside. But first, Carmela said, I'm going to cook him some sausage. Carmela, I followed her down the hall and into the kitchen. I need to, But Carmela wasn't listening. She was humming and talking to Willie while she put little sausages in a frying pan. Carmela, I said louder than I'd meant to, because it sounded like a yell. She looked at me kind of surprised. I need to tell you something, I said. She put a lid on the pan and turned to me. Okay, she said. I looked down at the dirty linoleum floor. Willie had left little muddy paw prints in front of the stove where Carmela was standing. I stole Willie, I said to the floor. A terrible silence settled over the room. I could hear Carmela's wheezy breathing, in and out, in and out. Finally, she said, What do you mean? I looked up. She was standing by the stove holding a fork. Her face was white, making her freckles stand out like sprinkles of cinnamon. Willie sat on the floor beside her, watching her, waiting for that sausage. I stole Willie, I said. I took him right out of your yard. Carmela gripped the edge of the counter for a minute, then pulled out a chair and sank into it. But why, she said. And then I did the hardest thing I'd ever done. I told Carmela everything. I started with those 3 rolls of quarters and the wadded up dollar bills in the mayonnaise jar, and I ended with Mookie leaving Willie's little green collar on that log. And then I waited for Carmela to hate me. But you know what? She reached out and took my hand in hers and didn't sound at all hateful when she said, I guess bad times can make a person do bad things, huh? I hung my head and couldn't get myself to say another word. You did a real bad thing, Georgina, Carmela said. I nodded, keeping my head down so my hair would hide my face. Tears dropped right off the end of my nose and onto the floor. The room was silent except for the sizzle of the sausage on the stove and the tick, tick, tick of the clock over the refrigerator. Carmela pushed herself up off the chair and went over to the stove. She took the sausages out of the pan and cut them into pieces. Willie whined at her feet. Tick, 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 went that clock. I'm sorry, I said. Tick, 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 went that clock. Carmela dropped the sausage pieces into Willie's bowl. He gobbled them up and then kept licking the bowl, making it slide across the floor. I guess I better go, I said, but I didn't move. I stayed there with my heavy cement feet planted firmly on the cracked linoleum of Carmela's kitchen floor, waiting for her to make me feel better. But she didn't. So I moved my heavy feet one in front of the other, down the hall, through the front door, and out onto the porch. I was almost to the gate when Carmela called, Georgina. I stopped and turned around. She stood on the porch holding Willie. His tail wagged, thwack, 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 against her leg. Why don't you and Toby come by tomorrow, she said. Y'all could take Willie for a walk. I felt my whole self get lighter, as if that heavy blanket of shame I'd been wearing had been lifted right up off of me. I nodded. Okay, I said. We will. Then I hurried out of the gate and up the road. I couldn't wait to tell Toby what I'd done. I knew he wouldn't be mad when I told him how happy Willie was and how Carmela didn't hate us. I'd let him hold the leash when we walk Willie tomorrow, and he wouldn't think I was mean anymore. When I got to the corner of Whitmore Road, I stopped and looked back. Carmela was still standing on the porch, holding Willie like she wasn't ever going to put him down. She waved at me. I waved back. Wow, great reading. Now, I want to know how we can use details to describe the event of Georgina talking to Carmela. First, we need to know who was there. What did you write down on the column labeled characters? Let's look back at the text. Okay, I see here that Georgina is part of this event since she addresses Carmela in the first sentence. In the second sentence, we see that Carmela is also a part of this event. Any other characters we need to write down? Great job, I almost missed that. Willie, Carmela's dog, is another character who is a part of this event. Let's make sure we write down all 3 of their names in our column labeled characters. Okay, now we need to record some details about the setting where this event took place. Let's look back in the text and see what details we can find about the setting. I'm going to pause to give you a few seconds to see if you can find any other details about the setting that you didn't get to write down during our first reading. Okay, so where is this event taking place? That's it, in Carmela's kitchen. How did you know? Oh, I missed the part where it said, I followed her down the hall into the kitchen. And it also says she was cooking Willie's sausages, meaning she is definitely in her kitchen. Let's make sure we write down Carmela's kitchen in that middle section of our graphic organizer. Now comes the hardest part, but I'm sure that you have already figured out that the sequence of things that happen during this event. What did you write happens at the beginning of this event? Me too. I wrote that Georgina shows up at Carmela's house to talk to her. What details in the text did you find that helped you to know that this is what happened in the beginning of the story? Shout it out. Let's pull up the text and see. Okay, great work. In the first sentence, we know that Georgina is at Carmela's house because she's calling through her screen door, and then Carmela comes to the door. Okay, what's the next major thing that happens in this event? Shout it out. You guys are good at this. Georgina told Carmela that she stole Willie. Can you shout what details from the text helped you to know that this was the next major thing that happened during this event? I'll put the text back up on the screen so that you can see it. Okay, I see that too. We see the dialogue where Georgina admits that she stole Willie. Let's write Georgina tells Carmela that she stole Willie in the middle section under our What Happened column. Okay, now we just have to determine what happened at the end of this event. What did you write on your paper? Great, we were thinking the same thing. I also wrote, Carmela forgives Georgina for stealing Willie. What details helped you decide that Carmela forgave Georgina? Great job. Some of you identified the dialogue between Carmela and Georgina, where Carmela invited Georgina to come back to her house the next day. So now we have lots of details to describe the event of Georgina talking to Carmela. Based on what we learned about this event, why do you think it's so important to the whole plot of the story? Let me know what you think. Yeah, I was thinking the same. This event is an important part of the plot because Georgina finally admitted that she stole Carmela's dog, Willie. Even though it wasn't right for Georgina to do this, Carmela showed her that, what's that word we talked about? Yeah, empathy, and forgave her for her mistake. Today we learned that events are what make up the plot of a story. We also learned that we can use details from the story to describe the event. When we look at the details that describe an event, we can better understand why that particular event is important to the overall plot of the story. Next time you read a story, see if you can use the details from the text to help you better understand and describe important events in a story. Thank you for being here today to learn and grow with me. And I look forward to seeing you next time when we talk more about reading skills and how to steal a dog.